Okay, so this is graphing in slope-intercept form. Okay, so this one's going to be kind of short, but basically we need to know what slope-intercept form is. And slope-intercept form is just, it's an equation, but it's y equals mx plus b, okay? And m is our slope. That's where we get the slope from slope-intercept form. And b is our y-intercept. And this actually helps us, it's kind of confusing with it being m and b, but actually if we think of m as how we move, and we think of b as where we begin, it kind of makes sense why we have m and b. Okay, so I'm going to explain that here in example number 1. So example number 1 says graph the equation y equals 2 over 3x plus 1. Okay, and step 1 says plot your y-intercept. So my first step is I'm going to look at that number, and that number is 1 in this case. This is where it's our b, it's where we begin. So this is our y-intercept, and remember on a graph we have y-axis and we have our x-axis. And it seems kind of weird, but we always start with our y here. So it's positive 1 in this case. So I'm going to find positive 1 on my y-axis, and that's my first point. Okay, that's where I begin. And then I leave my pencil there and I do step 2, which tells us to move using the slope. So another word for slope, usually you guys are probably used to, is what? Slope is also the rise over the run. So the fact that we have a fraction in front of our x is actually helpful because the 2 is on top. That tells us how much we're supposed to go up or down. Because if it was a negative number, we would actually go down instead of up. Okay? And the bottom number 3 tells us how much we're going to run. And we run and rise the same exact way on the number line. So since positive it goes this way, we're going to go up 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to run 3. So 1, 2, 3, and there is my second point. And as long as you have 2 points for a line, that's enough to draw a line. So that's what I meant to say, sorry. If you have 2 points, you can draw a line. Okay? So it doesn't have to be a perfect line, but as long as your line goes through the 2 points that you drew, and your 2 points follow the rules that we just did, those 3 steps. So I just did step 3, which is draw your line. Okay? This is one simple example, but I want to show you what other ones look like, because some of them can look really confusing. They won't look like they're in this form, but they actually are in this form. Okay? So when we identify slope, there's 4 possibilities. We have a positive slope, and that's when our m, our number, which is m, is positive. And a positive slope is always going to be a line that's going from left to right. It's always going up. Okay? So from left to right, just like you read. When you read words or sentences, we read a graph kind of the same way. And if we read it from left to right, we can see that this line is going up. Okay? So that's a positive slope line. It could be sloped just a little bit lower. It could be almost horizontal, but as long as it's going up, that's going to be a positive slope line. We also have negative slope lines. Okay? So negative slope, if positive is going up, negative slope is going down. And my line's not much of a line there. Kind of got squiggly there. That's when m is negative. Okay? And we also have 0 slope. So if our slope is 0, it's kind of weird. Our equation is going to be something like y equals b. And what I mean by that is it's just going to be y equals some number. Because if m equals 0, then we can imagine that the number in front of x is 0. And whenever there's a number in front of a variable, that means multiplication, right? So 0 times x is just going to make that whole value 0. So that number is going to completely disappear, and you're just going to be left with y equals b. Okay? And this line looks kind of crazy. It's actually just a horizontal line, and it's whatever that number equals. And we're going to look at an example right there that shows us that. Okay? We also have undefined slope, and this is where m is undefined, and it's kind of circular, but basically this is a horizontal line. So an undefined slope is when we have a line that is vertical. Okay, and I didn't write that in there, but you want to remember that this is a horizontal line, and this is a vertical line. If you want to write them right next to it, that's a good idea. I would suggest you do that. Okay. So example number 2, it says graph the line. This looks nothing like y equals mx plus b, but it actually is y equals mx plus b because we have y equals 0x minus 3. And we can see that the negative 3 is our b. So we're actually going to start at y negative 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And since it doesn't matter what x equals, x can equal anything. It can equal any number because the x disappears. Y is always going to equal negative 3. So I have a horizontal line there at y equals negative 3. That's how I would graph A. Okay? If we take a look at B, we have x equals 2. Well, now this looks nothing like y equals mx plus b. But, again, we have something that looks like this, except now we have x equals 2. And whenever you have an equation that looks like this, that means instead of a horizontal line, we now have a vertical line. So I find where x equals 2. There's my first point. And I know it's going to be a vertical line. Okay?